transform people's lives. And we've got to be careful about how we support them to do it better. We've got to be careful about how we support them to do it in context with the right tools. And so, Zanga African Metrics is a people business and analytics business that helps organizations manage data about their people for decisions and investments that will grow their capabilities. We help appreciate that your people are your productivity and they are your profitability. How you work with them, how you measure their results is important. And we want you to use tools that make sense for your context, whether it's your geography and your sector. I'm very happy to announce that our tools have been used in 20 African countries. We have a relationship with business partners across the continent, 55 who have been trained and licensed in our tools in 13 African countries. We are the tool behind some of the engagements with reserve banks across the continent, with airlines across the continent, with mining companies, with telecom companies. We are the back end to the people, the brains that are delivering Africa's future. And as I segue into the actual presentation of the report, I want to leave you with one thought. For you today, as we go through the data, in your respective roles and in what you do, remember that this is not just an agenda for Zambia. This is how Zambia is actually contributing to the world. This report has never existed before globally. There is no report that publishes data on human capital competencies with a population that has a majority of Africa's face. Most reports have Africa
Yes, I
only
am online. Can you
0.5%
confirm that you
and
can
the
hear
rest
me?
of the world. Why? It's because we have been we're here. It's time, and we've done it. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Can you confirm if you can hear me?
Doreen, are you online?
Good morning. I'm online. Can you confirm that you can hear me? Okay. Um, Thank you, Nankonde, for the introduction. So I'll also introduce myself before we get started on the presentation. I'm very excited to be joining you today. My name is Doreen Malavanu. I'm a business psychologist. I also the research and product development lead at Zanga African Metrics. I'm joining you this morning from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Very happy to be joining. Um, and and very happy also to be presenting this report, which marks, like Nankonde said, over 1,000 um, responses, over 1,000 Africans who have replied and responded to our assessment. And so I'm very excited to be joining you, and I look forward to discussing the insights from the report further. I'll now start sharing the presentation. Like Nankonde said, over 1,000 um, responses, over 1,000 Africans who have replied. Um, I'm very excited to be joining you, and I look forward to discussing any insights from the report.
Can we see, Doreen?
Sure.
We are just trying to get your face on the screen so we can actually see.
Okay.
I'll let you know as soon as we have a visual. The Zanga African Metrics team is spread across Lusaka, Cape Town, and Dar es Salaam. Doreen is our research and development head. As she mentioned, she's a business psychologist, and she brings the science to the vision so that what we put out and what we're using and what many of you here as clients and partners have been able to appreciate was developed scientifically. In getting Doreen online, I must say that Doreen was a person we met through research with the University of Sheffield. We did a joint project with their master's students in occupational psychology. And Doreen's part of her work to qualify for her master's degree in the UK was to volunteer for a project with a business, and she chose to work with us. She helped us work through the impact of our tools on a Zambian business in the telecom sector. She was able to take the experience and the results and translate that into findings. What led to the change through the tools and interventions we provided? When she submitted that work, and following her graduation, she chose to come and work with us. She felt our identity from a cultural perspective, our standards from a professional perspective. And so Doreen is great. We can see you, Doreen.
Okay. Yes.
The
so
sound is
that was my
coming
brief
through.
introduction.
And I hope also
Sorry?
all our participants online are able to hear us. We are live streaming through our LinkedIn platform and on YouTube. If you put up the slides as they're sorting out the sound, I can start the presentation, Jerry.
Yes, absolutely.
If you project the slides, I will do the introduction and then bring you back in for the data unpacking. One of the reasons Doreen is not here in person, and we hope she'll be here as this is an annual report, is that we've just completed the engagement survey for Air Tanzania. We were given the opportunity through our business partner in Tanzania, who's licensed in our tools, Sub-Sahara Institute, to be able to deliver a whole survey for engagement and cultural transformation for the entire staff of Air Tanzania. Everything from pilots to engineers to office managers. We've been able to give about their operation and how their people are supporting that, as well as the gaps and the needs moving forward as they transform their culture. So the inaugural report, this is what we're going to take you through, and we're going to try and keep it as high level as possible because we want you to read it. So don't expect a lot of detail. It's going to be very high level. You'll be able at the end, when we launch it, to download it. What you will find put are a number of sections that we've put in. So this wasn't just about presenting data. Yes, we are a company that uses technology to code and define talent for decisions that can be made in organizations. But at the same time, we wanted to ensure that we give it in the context of what's happening on the continent. And so what you'll see in the reports that you will download and hopefully read and give us feedback, as was mentioned earlier, you will be able to see that we broke it up. We wanted to ensure that the data speaks to what's currently happening on the continent. And so I will share a bit more about the three transformational shifts that are happening on the continent. And that is how we introduce the report. We introduce it into the context of what's happening in Africa. Then we take you into what's here. Doreen, and then I'll come into that. I'm just taking through the contents. Thank you. Then we'll explain the model and the chapter then presents the data. It presents the data, the lens about what is happening from a perspective, from a gender perspective, what is happening in different types of organizations and sectors. What does it mean for the competencies that we're seeing coming through, where we need to build more or where we're doing well? And then finally, the fourth chapter is a reflection reports will have of Spotlight. So this year, as you can understand, we started with home. We've got data from 20 African countries. So every report will have a spotlight on the data we're collecting from different countries. And at the moment, the competition for the next one is between Tanzania and Uganda. Finally, we'll take you through the reflections and recommendations. What does this data mean? How can you start processing and using it? Thank you. So we can go to the next slide. Sorry. These three shifts and how they happen and what contributes to them being successful is going to be influenced by how we leverage human capital as currency and trade it. And when I talk about trading, it is an exchange. It is an exchange of people's capabilities for industry results and economic impact. These structural shifts fact that the majority of the population across Africa are youth. It also talks to increased urbanization. It speaks to the fact that we're moving more into the cities. And you can see what's been happening even in Zambia is the regionalization of the economies. Why? Because people are now moving to places where they can get opportunities. Initially, that was mainly around capitals. But now you can see, just like other countries have done, where you have the political capital separated from the business capital, then you have other major cities and towns emerging. That there is something happening across Africa, which is about the movement of people. The other area around structural shifts is the middle class. We have a growing middle class. And what we're seeing is when you start to see certain consumption and opportunities in the market, it is because those in the country have been able to move into an income bracket, although it's still unequal and it's still very much divided. But the very presence of certain commodities and access to certain types of opportunities means that the economy is moving because people are now buying products and services that reflect more of a middle income economy. So the middle class is growing, and technology has enabled that. Airtel launching recently that pay card, looking at all the other payment systems, means we're buying solutions and products that complement our lives in ways that we never did before. So we need to take note of what does that mean in the workplace, because now you've got people who have access to things they never had before. And then the informal sector. Structurally, we're still trying to figure out how to bring in 80% of the economy that actually is informal and needs to be given its own metrics and its own measurements to understand how their contribution to GDP happens. So these are the structural shifts in the environment. The next level of shifts, the second, what our education systems are producing and what the industry and workforce is demanding. We need to be able to bridge that gap, and we can bridge that gap with data. So identifying what is happening in some of the sectoral shifts. We're looking at energy, we're looking at green economy, we're looking at the digital revolution. What does that mean for opportunities for entrepreneurship and also employability? How can we translate this data so it goes to our different educational institutions, whether it's a national business and training college, whether it's a vocational program, or whether it's a full degree and academic program. What do they need to know about the skills and capabilities that the economy needs so that we produce graduates at every level that can actually respond and be effective in the workplace? And finally, the social shifts. We've seen what's happening of women. It's not longer about defining whether women bring value. It's about strategically integrating it into strategies. And so those are the three strategic shifts we brought in. And the panel is going to have a conversation about some of these areas that we're presenting to you. And as we move forward, I want us to continue anchoring the conversation in the context of where we're going. It's not just about the data we've collected and the insights for 2026. It's about what's going to happen in the next 5 years in these three strategic areas. Whatever sector you're in, whatever organization you're leading in, you're supporting or supplying to, you are impacted by these shifts. These affect the people and how your return on investment will be calculated. Doreen, I now hand back to you.
Thank you, Nankonde. Thank you for the powerful introduction. So I will continue the presentation. Can you hear me now?
The sound is not coming through.
Okay, my microphone is on. Is on. How about now? Can you hear me now? I hope you can hear me now.
Okay. If we can increase the volume. Oh, it might be the volume on the TV, on the screen. In order to manage this, I'm a trained humanitarian emergency response. So we were trained to stay calm in crisis and just keep going. Having co-authored this report with Doreen, I will keep going, Doreen, until we get your sound audible for everybody to
Okay.
hear. I hope everybody.
All right.
So the next part of the report is presenting our model. It's very important. The beginning, I want to work with Zanga. Okay, is that going to help? Great. Doreen, would you like to say something?
Yes.
Okay,
I hope I'm audible now.
you are. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Yes. So the next part of the report, the next chapter discusses the foundations of our work and what are the theoretical, philosophical, but also scientific frameworks that guide the design of our tools and that have the tools that have led to this data set that we've now analyzed and are presenting trends for in the report. And so it's very important to us as an African company to continue to build um, high quality tools based on and building on the foundations of um, other global models and the global standards that have been set, but also introducing, like Nankonda said, our unique perspective of culture because we know that and believe that and have observed from decades of working in the African continent that we cannot separate our work from our cultural values. And so we build on the theories and the work of behavior and work psychology, which are which has built and has years of research done on leadership and interactions of people within organizational systems. But we also draw from international management best practices, including the global standards, and we build on global standards, but also ensure that we have the local uh, context and African resonance within tools and the cultural context and differences is something that we don't ignore, but rather is weaved into the very fabric of every tool that we design. And our theory of change, that is how we approach, especially specifically leadership development, is based on our model and our framework of self versus self and contextual mastery, within which we theorize leadership as a continuous journey where to remain effective, all the leaders, every leader has to continually assess and be aware of the context within which they're leading and understand what aspects of their leadership behaviors, what aspects of their values need to be adapted and or applied in that context in order to continue influencing people. And this effectiveness will be continually tested in terms of um, differing values from the ones that an individual leader has compared to the people that they're leading, but also tested by the level of clarity. That is, if someone, a leader, is not able, isn't very clear on their own abilities, their own values, they might struggle to continue to influence people across context. And so, that balance, achieving that balance of inner clarity and outer agility and adaptability, is um, is ideal in order to continue being effective across context. But also, our foundation, one of the foundations of our theory of change, is that culture is integral. As we have been sharing from the beginning, that we believe that the way that the culture shapes people's values also shapes how they continue to show up in the workplace, outside of the workplace, but also in interactions that continue to affect them and their work. And so, our assessment then is a leadership development tool which has taken these foundations and theories and philosophies into account and has been utilized, have been used by over 1,000 professionals by now. And how and what it tests is what the assessment, what the test is a framework built on 14 global work related competencies. By competencies, I mean um, skills, knowledge, and abilities that are relevant across the globe, across the continent as well. But we add the extra layer of the cultural dimensions. And so, just to mention the framework and the competencies that we assess, they are organized into four pillars. So the first pillar being how a person thinks or their mindset. The second pillar being how a person relates to others, which we call the relationships. The third pillar being how they lead and influence people, which is the leadership pillar. And the last pillar being um, their execution or how they deliver their work. And so when a person completes the assessment, which we have done for over 1,000 people, over 1,000 professionals in Africa and outside, a few countries outside as well are represented. So when they complete this assessment, they then get insights onto their levels of mastery um, according to these four pillars and according to the 14 competencies within each pillar. But also the added layer is their level of awareness on the cultural dimensions or the cultural values that continue to affect their work, including their competencies, their work related competencies. And so from the analysis of this data set, um, what we are finding as the averages or as the trends in averages across the pillars, the competencies, or the cultural differences. As you can see here, when we look at the pillars, for example, as I mentioned, we have the four pillars to the assessment, the mindset, relationship, leadership, and execution. These are all ranging on the 5.5 level of mastery, which is a skill level of mastery. And we organize or we score these levels of mastery in three bands. That is the knowledge level, the skill level, and the mastery level. And so at a skill level, what the implication or what the interpretation is that there is a room for improvement. That is, a person is able to observe, but also is quite um, competent in this skill or this knowledge area. However, there is a room for improvement which will help them be more consistent, but also help them be a role model to others. And so, what we can interpret here with this averaging of skill level at the pillar level is that there is still room for improvement within the African work working population, especially the ones represented in our sample. There's still room for improvement with reference to all the pillars that we're measuring. Similarly to the competencies within the pillars, which I will mention quickly. um, include resilience, ownership, that is accountability, excellence, which is the quality of work that one delivers, ethics, that is adherence to protocol, but also how they conduct themselves, emotional intelligence, communication, cultural awareness, that is their awareness of personal agendas, but also other agendas within the working environment, stakeholder management, leading teams, developing teams, business approach, um, problem solving, decision making, and continuous improvement. We still see that the range across the entire data set remains at the skill level with an average of about 5.5. Now, to put this into context, the highest score within this scale is a 10. And so this is just above the average for most of the population or for across the population. And for cultural differences and cultural values, similarly, we see the across the data set, we are at averaging at a 5.5 for the cultural dimensions of the cultural values of loyalty, pride, respect, belief, and community. Now, where the nuance is seen and where the contrast is seen within the data set is when we compare groups within the data set that we have. And so across demographic groups, for example, here, these are the gender differences. So when we compare the scores for male respondents and female respondents, interestingly enough, across the competencies and across the pillars, there aren't any statistically significant differences between male respondents and female respondents. However, with respect to the cultural dimensions, as you can see, there are slight differences here, but the only statistically significant difference is represented in the cultural value of community. And here, women rate themselves higher and more than more than men, sorry, on this value. And we believe that this reflects the societal, the way society is viewed, especially in African context, where the burden, for lack of a better word, the burden of forming, nurturing relationships and creating and continuing community is on women. And so it only is placed on women usually. And so um, it's only true then, it's only valid that women see and identify themselves more within these cultural aspects of community or within the questions and items that ask them to reflect upon how they value and how they are aware of the role of community values, the value of community within the workplace. But also, other interesting and statistically significant differences show up when we compare the demographic group of age. And so here we have compared the groups of youth. So the youth group here being people between the ages of 18 to 35, and non-youth being the people and the professionals over 35. And so across all the pillars that we discussed, the mindsets, the leadership, the relationships, the execution, and across all the 14 competencies as well, the youth, so non-youth or the experienced professionals, have ranked themselves significantly higher than the youth population within the workplace. And so we think that this points to two interesting insights. One being that with the pillars and the competencies that we assess, there are opportunities to um, mentor to mentor people who are entering the workplace, to continue to build their skills. As we can see here, this suggests the difference, the significant difference suggests that with more experience, with more experience definitely comes more competence and more mastery within those soft skills and leadership skills that we assess in our tool. Um, and so we have a unique opportunity here to continue or to introduce mentorship programs to continue to build the skill set of youth, especially with respect to the competencies and pillars that we mentioned. This is not to say that the youth themselves do not offer or do not have skills that they themselves can share and continue to build within their workplace. Um, but with respect to the competencies within our tool, there is opportunities to continue to mentor and build their skill set. But also, as Nankonde mentioned, our spotlight nation for this data set for this inaugural report is Zambia. And we have the biggest pool of respondents from Zambia, where we have 231 professionals. And as was mentioned by Nankonde, but also by Yaza, Kara in the opening remarks, it's a growing nation. It's a very ambitious nation and has a lot of strategic um, a lot of strategic initiatives going on in the country overall. And so it's important, and this insight is important to then understand what are the skill gaps, if any, what are the skill strengths as well, that they can continue to be built on and can continue to be complemented as um, as Zambia continues to strive towards achieving its goals as a country. And so within our data set, what appeared as the highest scoring um, pillar is execution. And execution reflects how people deliver their work. And I think this reflects and suggests that Zambia continues to have a very hardworking community or hardworking group of working hardworking group. But the lowest scoring pillar within the Zambia data set is relationships. And so I'll let you reflect on what this could imply. But also, when we look at the competencies within the 14 competencies, the highest scoring competencies are continuous improvement, which is people's attitudes towards learning, innovation, and continuing to improve in their work, but also ethics, which is people's adherence to protocol, but also integrity, excellence, and leading teams. And the lowest scoring are problem solving and business approach. And so this represents across the data set that these are um, for the lowest scoring, these are areas that a lot of more focus can be placed on in terms of growing, especially when we do any type of group development activities, be it training, be it workshops, be it introducing initiatives at different levels of a person's career or people's careers and or even education. But also the highest scoring cultural dimensions are pride and belief. And so this is just some insight about Zambia, which is discussed in more detail in the report. Also in the report, we discuss now our approach or how we use these insights. So one of the ways that we use the insights from our assessments and have done this with a few of our clients is with helping for building capacity within middle managers. We understand the role of middle managers to be one that is very complex within organizations and one that we have found applying our theory of change to advancing to building capability within middle managers resulted into improved levels of self-awareness, improved leadership skills, but also improved ownership of tasks. And this is key because a lot of times, um, given the many hats that middle managers are often um, having to wear, as represented here in the little word cloud um, graphic, that is the advocates, interpreters, executors, coordinators, liaisons, mentors, strategists. There's so many things that they have to balance in order to continue to drive productivity in organizations. We understand that it is key for them to not only understand and deliver technically, but also understand how to influence others, but also understand themselves better. And so we find these insights, these leadership insights, to have been very useful, very insightful for middle manager groups, but also help us then and help organizations then implement more targeted and more tailored solutions to improving leadership skills within the middle managers. But also we have applied our assessments in the context of improving and mentorship programs for women. And so with our cultural dimensions and our cultural insights, we recognize that for women within African workplaces, the cultural values that we bring, not just the women, but also men as well, society as well, society in general, bring to the workplace can subconsciously, unconsciously perpetuates barriers in the growth of women's careers. And so when we look at, um, for example, the cultural dimension of respect, it's often the case that leadership is being coded as masculine. And this is seen even in, for example, when people are asked to think off the top of their heads what an effective leader looks like, they're more likely, research has found that they're more likely to describe masculine qualities rather than feminine qualities or qualities that are more associated with women. Similarly to loyalty, where people and research has suggested that there has been loyalty is more or stronger to male hierarchies rather than female hierarchies. And in workplace organizations as well. Similarly,
Frozen, so maybe I can pick it up from there. The data suggests, as you can see, that women tend to show up in the middle of organizations and the lower entry point, and less in the senior. But also at the middle management level, which is actually the opportunity to move higher, you see that there are more males in these roles, which means the pipeline into senior leadership starts from the middle, and it's dominated by males versus females. In terms of the cultural dimension, what Doreen was trying to share is that whilst you look at this data, and whilst we're just giving you highlights from the reports that you will read, let's help you interpret it in your context. And so this is the last slide before Doreen hands back to me. So Doreen, allow me to pick it up, if that's okay. I just wanted to support the beginning of your interpretation. So when we talk about improving awareness, improving leadership skills, and ownership of tasks, let's take it in our local case study. What is happening is you've seen that on execution, so our leadership competency framework, as Doreen mentioned, has 4 pillars: mindset, how you think; relationships, how you manage and understand your stakeholders; leadership, how you understand strategy and help the team or help the rest of the organization to achieve the goal; and then execution, how you plan. Zambia's data has revealed high execution. But when you go into the details, it's execution on tasks based on compliance. It's also execution on tasks not necessarily connected to ownership. So we tick, but we don't necessarily appreciate the value of that task in the bigger system. And so when you break down the data, you will see that we're very good doing things, but we're not so good at owning them and then evolving them to improve. The other area you probably notice is relationships as skills. And in there, there's skills is being measured: stakeholder management, effective communication, emotional intelligence, and cultural awareness. Under relationships in data on Zambia, relationships is we understand our stakeholders, but we treat them all the same. And so when you come for something, I would treat you how I feel you should be treated. And I treat everybody the same. When we send people for customer experience training, we're helping them understand that the stakeholder then determines how you respond to them and how you appreciate that you are the face, for example, of the business. When we talk about emotional intelligence in organizations, we talk about the silent vendettas that continue through leaders and teams, where nothing is being said, it's silent, but you've just registered a war. And so what we have unpacked, and I hope you get the significance of our data, is the Western tool will tell you Zambia execution is excellent, relationships is excellent. What we're telling you is, but then why are we not upper middle income economy? We're telling you that it's because in the meeting, Execution means people are ticking boxes. But that same box, when you have to do it next month, at the end of the year, you are almost repeating it because you haven't owned it. And if anything changed, your line manager is usually the one to give you that input. How do we change that mindset and thinking? And so the Western tools will not tell you that in the relationship. And what we've picked up is you must understand the stakeholders, their loyalties, their social capital. There's pre-existing currency that is exchanged informally. And we've named it, and nowhere else has it been brought in to understand that the reason, although my subordinate is doing average and has been given a 1 out of 5 rating at a 5 level being the highest, because that's my severe. So when you bring the culture into the environment, you equip people to stand on the systems that can help them be objective. In this context of high context cultures and relationship systems, you must understand what's going on in our workplaces. That means we don't achieve the results. But the report, according to Peter Drucker, will tell you that we are good in these things. Our economy doesn't feel it. And definitely the CEO does not understand how they get results 1 month, but month on month, year on year, we're not sustaining them in the way we can. And that's where we believe that the information we're sharing to you is to appreciate sustainability, continuity, and ownership and succession. How do you bring those in? And finally, you noticed the lowest data in Zambia was problem solving. Are you surprised? And I say that as a Zambian because it also means that in what cases, in workplaces, are we holding targets hostage? Because we'll do our part, and when we get to a challenge, then it sits there until somebody weeks later realizes that, but this was actually known by somebody, and the problem was waiting for usually the line manager or somebody else in the team to have the courage to say, this system has not been working, and we stopped using the ERP. We now just do around the system. So it's not to condemn, it's not to judge, it is what it is. And I think that's why we're having this conversation, because until we confront, until we face, until we do what's happening, we recognize then what is the currency that the leaders are demonstrating to allow us in our context and in our culture with respect and understanding how we operate to still get results. And finally, business approach was the final lowest in Zambia. Business approach means, what is your why? When you complete this task, does it actually return something to the business? Is there a metric in our minds that we can unlock through the interventions we provide that help people take it to that extent, and not just take it to the extent is, I showed up, I came to work. And the youth dividend, the demographic dividend, is changing what workplace also means. And so we've also brought this through the data. So what Doreen was sharing was the results from the tools we displayed. What I am encouraging you to do as you read the report is the interpretation we're giving you, the local language, about what the global metrics are saying, and what is between you and potentially the dividends to your shareholders, or what is between you and the next beneficiaries of a health facility that can be effectively introduced to a community. If we go to the next slide, let's discuss the implications, and then I will close there before we go into a panel discussion. I'm aware of time. So what does it mean for our leaders? It means that pay attention to the models that you are using to measure and understand what success is in your context. And then partner with your human capital and your human resources teams to translate the business strategy into the human resources strategy. That combination allows not just tasks to be done and bodies in functions to actually transformational catalysts that are strategic partners in businesses, in governments, in academia. And so what we want you to appreciate is bring in cultural intelligence as a competitive advantage. Don't ignore it because you're already dealing with the consequences of it. Get on top of the mindset connection that whilst we may be striving towards building competencies, those competencies are not always delivered through a qualification. We are mapping people to qualifications into functions and roles because, according to the traditional systems, that is the first way we can validate and predict the success. What we're saying, actually, in our context, you need to map the competencies, which means then know which competencies are key in roles, and in the interviews, use a competency-based interview. Do the qualifications tick? Did they hand their certificates or this? And we like that a lot. Have they submitted? No, there's one certificate missing. The diploma from 19 something is missing. But the interview should actually be looking for where have they demonstrated competencies in their work on their own, in the community, in the things they volunteer for. And then in the previous roles, what may they have done that shows you that this person can actually do the job? Not just the person has the paper that says they can have the potential to do it. And that goes back to our education system. We produce people on paper, but then their ability to apply that knowledge is where the interventions come in and need to be supported. And finally, we've got so many transitions happening. Moving into green and circular economy, moving into energy shifts in the energy sector, moving into industry revolutions that we're seeing in our generation. How do we ensure that leaders, you map the competencies of your strategy in the next 5 years and then understand how you bring in the pipeline, and I won't say this again, how you exit those who are not able to help deliver, not because there's something wrong with them, but because we may have failed them. We may not have help them adapt to what is needed in the sector. For business, we need to redesign talent pipeline, and this is what I've shared. We need to invest in resilience. One of the things that came out low on the youth is resilience, mental health. The way they cope with work environments is very different. And so the youth who are here, I hope you are hearing for yourselves why they ask for certain things like wellness, days off, certain opportunities like activities, or even different types of people coming into the organization. Because the youth are seeing that the things we have ignored as other generations and taken as normal are actually trauma. And I think it's important we have that national conversation because then it translates into substance abuse. And the substance abuse, from the work we've seen in organization, is translating to how people show up for work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They show up physically, but what else is showing up with them that is also creating toxic environments? And we've already spoken about appreciation. Many times we get onboarded into our reporting lines. We don't get onboarded into our cultural systems that actually impact the results we're going to achieve. Help bridge the generational gaps, and to do that, we can help. Please put the next slide. As Zanga African Metrics, we have solutions and tools that we want you to we have individual assessments. We have 360 feedback to manager. We have tools to map and plans for succession readiness. These are just some of the solutions that we offer you through technology to make it accessible across the board. And I'm so happy to see Director of Human Resources from Zambia Airports, Mwite, who's here because she's seen the impact of what data can do to investments. We worked with her and her team to actually support how do you work within organizations that are traditionally set in their ways of working? And how do we support a receptive culture of receiving feedback? On the panel, you'll have a few other of our clients that we've worked with who are going to share from their own perspective what it means. And so this is the report at a high level. I hope you're appreciating that we have a lot of detail that we didn't put here. We wanted to give you the conversation, some of the insights we're finding, and we're naming the pain. For a long time, we either ignored it, consciously or subconsciously. We've chosen to address that some of our workplace, it's just like that. This is how it is. It doesn't have to be like that. Because for us to reach our objectives, for you to achieve your strategic plans, it means we have to have an honest conversation, not to humiliate people, not to judge people, but to actually build the supporting systems and tools that will help them have the choice to change. If they don't change, then it's a different conversation. But we must create the opportunity because we understand what's going on in African workplaces. Thank you. So in terms of our program, and we're conscious of time, I'm very honored to hand over the floor to Mr. Nicholas Goma from the Ministry of Youth and Sports and Arts, the Principal for Creative Arts, Industries and Research Development. The government of Zambia has always been a strategic partner in the work we have done as Zanga African Metrics. We are the architects of the change management framework for the entire public service. I encourage you to have a look at what a Zambian business can do when they bid for an RFP that global companies traditionally win. If you go to the website for Cabinet Office, you will find at the top right-hand corner, Zanga. There is a change management framework that is not giving just a process to help us get to ownership of the tasks we execute, but also the behavior we need to change. We provided the model that speaks to the culture, but is understood globally. Mr. Ngoma, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. The energy levels in this room are quite low. Is there something that has happened that I'm not aware about? The energy levels are low. Okay, allow me to recognize the board chairperson. Right, but allow me to begin by recognizing Ms. Yaza Kara, the board chairperson, directors of BongoHive, Mr. Muyangana, if I pronounced that right, Mr. Lukonga, Lindunda, leaders, investors, representatives of the academia that are present in the room and those following online, our media partners, the youths in the room. I just simply say, ladies and gentlemen, my mic seems to be giving up on me. Yes. Thank you for that. After such a very powerful presentation on the report outline, I feel I might just end up repeating what has already been said. But from the perspective of the government side, representing the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts, for us this is a report that we have vested interest in. Why? Because one of the critical issues that it brings out is a place for the youths when it comes to the human capital in Zambia and how we are harnessing what's available to us in terms of economic development and national development at large. So that being said, I would like to commend Zanga Africa Metrics for producing the inaugural Human Capital Insight Report and also acknowledge BongoHive for supporting this platform for dialogue, innovation, and evidence-based development. This report is very timely in terms of contributing to speaking to a broader national and continental conversation, how Africa understands, measures, and develops its people. It covers important issues around human capital, leadership, workplace culture, business performance, organization development, gender, entrepreneurship, the youth space, and the future of work. These are all critical areas of Zambia's national development. As I indicated earlier, our interest as a Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts, we see this report adding particular value in the sense that what it tells us about the development pathways requires young people's participation within that space. Our mandate is directly connected to youth empowerment, skills development in the areas of sports and creative arts and enterprises, leadership, participation, and creation of opportunities for young people to contribute meaningfully to national development. So, while the report is broad and relevant to many sectors, for us it is especially useful as a data resource that helps us think more intentionally about how we prepare young people for work, enterprise, leadership, and social contribution. Why this matters in terms of the youth development? Young people are one of Zambia's greatest national assets. They are active in every part of our economy and society. Formal employment, informal enterprise, sports, creative arts, in the space of media, digital space and technology, agriculture, creative industries, trade, community development, and innovations. You cannot actually exclude the role of the young people. If you look around you in the room, the majority of the people providing the service, even for this event to be covered on online, are young people, if you look around you in the room. But potential alone is not enough. Young people need clear pathways that help them move from talent to skill, from skill to opportunity, and from opportunity to productivity, leadership, and enterprise as a whole. This is where a report is useful. This particular report on human capital, and that we really appreciate the government partners such as Zanga, BongoHive, and all other supporting partners for having provided the necessary support to ensure that this particular survey was a success. And I'll mention later on why we value this. It helps us move from general statements about youth potential to a more evidence-based understanding of what young people need in order to thrive. As a ministry, we can draw lessons from this, and as a government at large, we can equally provide critical key learning points for even the national development plan. I hope we can take advantage of the moment that the 8th National Development Plan is still under review as we look at developing the next 9th National Development Plan to provide inputs that this particular report is giving us. I feel on a personal level that we really need to make use of these the inputs that the report is giving us. I've always been one of those people that is highly concerned when we develop a very good report such as this that is very insightful, provides a lot of good inputs for policy direction, but then instead of putting it to use, we just put it on a nice shelf and then it accumulates dust. And then we have someone come from Rwanda or Uganda, and they simply get that same policy, and then they go and just change a few things on it and they implement. And then what happens? We the Zambians, we start off to go to Rwanda and Uganda to go and learn how they're implementing a particular program. And then they say, wait, hold on, we actually got the blueprint from you. So true. It's interesting though that the report is showing that we Zambians, we're good at executing. It's a new dimension I'm learning. It's a good thing, right? Most of the time we are very good at preparing very brilliant documents that the rest of the world uses to implement our brilliant ideas. So let's use this opportunity to use this particular report to inform their preparations of the 9th development plan. It would be good to see that certain chapters are seriously revised as opposed to just a tradition and custom way that if you sleep and you're a policy, you're part of a technical policy team, you even know how the 9th National Development Plan would appear chapter by chapter, because certain things don't really change much. But let's use such material to really inform national development, because that helps government to really make well-informed decision for its people. I thought I could just make emphasis to that. It's a very good report. I took time to read it because my interest is also in areas of research and what's coming up. So in terms of some of the lessons that can be drawn, for us as a ministry, it's also about mindset change, and I think the presenter before me ably highlighted for the focus areas within the pillars that were being mentioned. Resilience, ethics, communication, leadership. I could say so many things about issues on leadership, but also just to make an emphasis that one thing I appreciate about the report, it brings out the aspect of leadership as a key pillar, that even young people need to fill up that space. And filling up the space in a more productive and positive manner. I'm sure you all understand what I mean by that. Problem solving, cultural awareness, and the ability to work with others. This is very important for youth development because many young people are building their livelihoods in diverse ways. Some through, of course, small businesses, others through sports activities, the creative arts, the digital and social media platforms, the informal trade, vocational skills, and community enterprises. The report also highlights the importance of leadership development. This I earlier on highlighted. For young people, leadership should not only be understood as holding a senior institutional position at work or senior political title within the political realm, but rather understood that it begins with self-awareness, discipline, confidence, responsibility, teamwork, and the ability to create value where they are or where they are placed. Thirdly, also the report helps us to think more clearly about employability and entrepreneurship, focusing on the young people's needs in terms of skills that help them access jobs, as well as also the need for the need for competences to create opportunities, manage enterprises, adapt to change, and participate in emerging sectors. Let me also just take a slight pause. Emerging sectors. I think what really usually makes Zambia, as well as rest of the African continent is sometimes we want to follow and not lead. If it's coming from within the continent, it's not credible. It does not have value. But it must come from somewhere outside the continent. Then it's of value. We take it and then we run with it. So with regard to emerging issues, how nice it would be to see that Africa takes the lead in actually spearheading certain emerging issues in our day life evolving. At this point, I also want to make reference that as a Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts, our interest is to see that the young people within the country are given the relevant space, the adequate space for them to thrive, be it through sports, be it through the creative industries, be it through the artistic work. Our desire is to ensure that that large number of the unemployed young people can actually become active players within the growth and development of our national economy and provide space as well for employing other fellow young people. We must shift from the thinking that when I finish school, I must look for employment. We must build a system where young people are self-driven. There is something that charges them to say, I've learned what I need to learn. Let me use what I have to create something that can employ me as well as employ other young people. So it's a cultural issue, like you rightly mentioned. The mindset has to change. For our ministry, the report is also relevant because in terms of sports and arts, the creative arts are not only recreational activities, they are powerful spaces for human capital development. I always feel sad when on some parents' platform where I am with, where I notice most of us parents don't seem to support those talents that our children have, be it in sports or in creative arts, because we perceive them as a time-wasting elements to them focusing on their education. That perception has to change. And that's why we are always on the tail end in following while the rest of the world are taking all the gold medals at the international platform in sports and other creative industries. We must harness and ensure that we provide the right platform for our children to develop their talents and so that they can help in the future carry the flag of Zambia at international level. So we value the aspects of sports and recreative, and this is one of the powerful tools in contributing to the human capital development. The countries that have actually realized this, they are maximizing this use and they are making serious revenues out of this. And if you check the GDP contribution for some countries just not far from Zambia within Africa that are highly contributing to their national GDPs from sports and creative arts, you'd be shocked and then you'll be asking yourself, what's wrong with us in Zambia? Where are we lacking? Where is our challenge? Reports such as this, they charge us to really reflect on some of these issues. So through sports, young people learn discipline, resilience, teamwork, leadership, and focused performance. Through the creative arts, young people build imagination, build their communication enterprise, and cultural confidence and innovation. These are not soft or secondary skills. They are central to the future development of our country. The report emphasizes on measuring competences, values, and cultural context that can help us better recognize the human capital being developed through sports, creative arts, and other sectors. In terms of value for informal and non-traditional pathways, many young Zambians are not developing through traditional formal employment routes alone. They are part of the bigger picture of what forms the informal sector of employment, such as the markets, studios, sports clubs, farms, saloons, the tuntembas on the mobile money booths, the digital platforms, and community organizations, as well as so many other small-scale enterprises. A report like this helps us to recognize that human capital development must also reach young people in the informal sector and the non-traditional spaces. It challenges us to ask questions such as, how do we identify talent where it already exists? How do we support young people who are building livelihoods outside the formal sector? How do we recognize practical skills, leadership potential, and enterprise abilities? How do we create bridges between informal sector, the training, finance, the market, and national development? I think these are very critical questions for us to address, for us to begin to answer some of these gaps that are identified. These are important questions for our evolving national development framework and for the government and its non-state actor partners to ensure that we have a better Zambia in the future. And that, of course, leads me to touch finally on the issue of partnership. The report also reinforces the importance of partnership. Government has an important role to play, but youth development requires a whole ecosystem. Public institutions, private sector, innovation hubs, employers, training institutions, the academia, creative industries, sports bodies, development partners, and also most importantly, the young people themselves. Like the saying goes, nothing for us without us, right? I learned that from the youths themselves. I'm glad to see that they are in the room. Otherwise, would just be implementing something or proposing and recommending implementation of something that they are not a part of. So this is the way to go. I commend the board team and the directorate of Zanga for ensuring that within the room today we have the young people themselves as we talk about them. And I'm hoping to see a young person feature on the discussions to hear their voice and their perspective about these issues. Then I will know that yes, we are on the right track. Yeah? I'm way slightly past my youth age, so I may not fully understand and appreciate the needs of the youth today. Yeah, so we need to hear from them. Finally, I would like to commend Zanga Africa Metrics on this very, very important contribution to national development. Before we can actually actualize ideas, we need an opportunity where we can think through them using such platforms. And someone needs to be able to somewhat to take a proactive actions to investigate what's reality from myth, what's assumption from facts. And you're helping us to really reflect on what's really on the ground, even as we propose and make recommendations for policy decision making moving forward. So on behalf of government and on behalf of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts, I wish to commend the team, Zanga Africa Metrics, for this brilliant report. I'm still digesting some of the provisions, the recommendations that are coming through. Very interesting. And also the partners that actually provided their resources to ensure this is done. And among those also BongoHive and other business partners that earlier were highlighted. The Human Capital Insight Report is broad in scope and relevant to many sectors. It speaks to the future of work, leadership, culture, business, gender, entrepreneurship, and national productivity. I wish also to take this opportunity to make an appeal that as we digest the report, personally I am a pro-inclusive person. And I usually never want to leave anyone behind, including persons with disabilities. So as we discuss the role of the youths, the role of the women, the role of the men, and everybody else, let's ensure that we do not leave out the persons with disabilities. They have equally tons of issues that they would want to share for such a report so that their voice can also be heard in the recommendations that would inform policy direction. You only understand that when you are in their position. When you're in a wheelchair and you're trying to access a building of critical service delivery, but you can't access it because the building does not allow you accessibility. Then you begin to understand, so, okay, this is a category that is very important to keep in the room at critical decision-making point. So as we digest and discuss, I hope we can also have them also in the mind. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to really commend this work and make an appeal that let's ensure that it does not end up on a shelf like so many other good reports. But I trust those listening, those seated in here, we can pick something from this, the recommendations forwarded, to ensure that they inform our policy decision making, not only at national level, but even in areas where we function within our individual capacities and areas where we are responsible for different units of our work. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goma, sir, for that powerful address and for sharing those reflections with us. We appreciate your presence and your contribution to this important conversation. It's a national, it's a continental conversation, and we really appreciate your insights. If you have any burning questions from what has been presented, just please take note of those questions. There will be a Q&A section. Our team will be ready to address those. We'll now move into what seems to be a really promising conversation. It's a panel discussion, and it's themed from insight to action. It invites us to think beyond this data, the findings, into answering the critical question, what happens next? What do we do next? And so to moderate this session, allow me to introduce Lukonga Lindunda. Lukonga is the co-founder and director of BongoHive Consult. He is a Mandela Washington Fellow and startup ecosystem builder. He co-founded BongoHive in 2011 and has since led the hub to support over 1,500 startups and MSMEs across across Zambia. A big round of applause as Lukonga comes to the stage and introduces his panelists.
Good morning, everyone. In our culture and tradition, by this time we would have been standing up and dancing, you know. So please rise to your feet, just so that we can not doors in the next 30 minutes. So just 10 seconds, just stretch a little bit. Yes, you can stretch. All right, please take your seats. I would like to invite a couple of people to my panel. Martina Janai Piri, who's a principal at WCAP. Yes, please. Come to the front. Please give her a hand. Ingotu Zalumis, founder and MD of Palm Golding Properties, Zambia. Welcome. Maunga Kwenda, CEO of Sanlam Life. And Mafipe, who's MD of MCA Zambia. All right, we all have our mics. Good. There was a lot in that report. A couple of things stood out for me. If you look behind the panel, there's a broken light. The reason that light is broken because the system is there, but the execution is not on point. But we have a lot to discuss today. One of the items that stood out for me, you had a slide on middle managers. For some of you who've been following the impact of AI on management, there are a number of organizations now, particularly US-based tech companies, who are saying, we actually don't need middle management anymore, right? Because AI can execute so well. Why do I need to tell someone to tell the other person to execute, right? And I was telling my team the other day, why should I spend time trying to explain to you what needs to be done when I can explain to AI what needs to be done, and it gives me what needs to be done. So I'm now questioning whether I should delegate a task or whether I should do it myself, right? But that is the impact of technology now on how we work. And I'm sure this panel will also be able to review a couple of things that are happening across sectors. So there are 4 themes we like to address today. There's the resilience gap. My kids can barely watch a 10-minute video. That has an impact in the organization as well, in how people can actually stay focused as well. So we'll also address the leadership through a cultural lens, belief, community, respect, loyalty, and pride, and how these shape our organizations. The third one, we have 2 women on the panel. Obviously, we have to talk about women. Women and leadership pipelines. The data reveals women's competency, strengths, where they are underrepresented, and also where there's meaningful progress required. The last one is youth. Unfortunately, we don't have a youth. I'm the youngest, I think, on the panel, maybe. I will gladly take that responsibility. Youth and the next generation, the gap between young Africans' ambition. And we know our young people are ambitious, but the systems are not there to always support this ambition, especially when they talk about becoming TikTokers and YouTubers, and we want them to be engineers. Right? But these are the 4 key areas we would like to address, and obviously we want to tap into the experiences of all you panelists. So pick and choose which theme you would like to focus on. Use your experiences also to kind of express how you are navigating these issues, and also how you are hopefully winning. Yes, who would like to go first? Ingotu. Yeah, please go ahead.
So where do I start from?
The top.
The top. The first one was on resilience. I must share my experience from being an entrepreneur, having started Palm Golding 18 years ago, and seeing the evolution of a typical member of staff. When we started in 2008, the demographic, the average age in the office was 40 plus. Today, it's 26. And what I've seen, my personal experience is that Okay. What I've seen in terms of resilience is that I think all of us can attest. Our generation has a different kind of resilience. It's not, I think there's always an assumption that we are more resilient than they are. But what I've come to appreciate that they have a different kind of resilience. For them, they show up really for each other more than we do. What we've seen is the understanding of, in my particular business, I've got to talk about my particular business. What I've seen is that there's a deeper loyalty to each other as opposed to our generation. It's a different kind of loyalty. I've seen it in the office. They will go to bat for each other. And in that way, they tend to execute better. So their resilience is different. And when you provide the environment around mental wellness, which is a real issue, I mean, I must admit I took it very lightly myself for some time because I didn't appreciate it as much until you begin to see people in the office underperforming. And when you peel back the layers as to why somebody's underperforming, you get to see that this generation, the younger generation, the youth, are dealing with a lot more than what we had to deal with when we were growing up. When I was 25, I was not worried about my social media presence. I was not worried about how many likes I got. Even if they're professional, this is something that it means a lot to them. So when you begin to peel back the layer of an employee, you begin to see that you have to, as an employer, create the environment in order for them to feel safe. Safety, mental safety, is something real. And then, of course, we've got to bridge the gap between how do we lead today? What skills do I need today to be able to lead a younger team? I had to personally transform. I had to be somewhat softer in my approach and my tone from I want it done now to please can I have it done now? It will really mean a lot to me and to us. But with that approach, I found that productivity changed. We're still on a learning curve. Culturally, I love what Nankonde had said about Masebele. You work, now I work with my friends' children. I have 2 in my employment. And I'm not auntie, I'm MD. And to be able to create that difference, they find it very difficult to see this, I wear 2 hats. I'm on a succession plan. I've got my children in the business. I often have to remind them, hey, I'm not your mom. I'm the MD. So this decision I'm making is for the betterment of the company, not the family. This is not the family. You have to put on different hats. So, when it comes to, and I think the insights are great. I think the cultural intelligence that you're talking about is something that we have to actually bear in mind. Spam Golding is a South African franchise. It has South African systems. And as we know, it's predominantly white. At one point, I was the only black franchisee. So I would walk into a room with 250 franchisees, all white. On average, most of them 10 years older than me. So I am dealing with people who did business in the apartheid era. I would be asked where the bathroom is. I would be asked to pass them a glass of water. And, to work in that kind of system. So you can imagine all the HR systems were built around a certain type of persona. And then you bring them into Zambia, young entrepreneur, starting a business. You're trying to put in these systems and they just don't work. They just didn't work for years on end. And you're wondering, what is it that I'm getting wrong? Until I recognize is that the system was not built for us. The system around how to train people we've got a huge online training academy. The induction program, it didn't speak to us. People would doze during an induction, listening to the online training. staff members afterwards, when you do after the 2-week induction program and orientation, couldn't remember. Nothing resonated with them. Absolutely nothing. So we then had to change the induction program to suit us. We changed it, we adjusted it, and said, this is what works for us. And that became the game changer for us in a business. We then had a more engaged team. I'm pleased to say that a lot has happened over the last few years in terms of changing the way we work, understanding culture, understanding how important it is for somebody to go for an auntie's funeral. We didn't understand those things. I'd say, if it's not direct family, you go after 5. You know, and then you see that it begins to impact them. So I think I'm really looking forward to taking a deep dive. I did skim through it, but I'm looking forward to taking a deep dive. On the other end, in terms of boards, and I'm chair of the Remunerations and Nominations Committee at NICO, and I see that this is going to really change the way we do things. We have a one NICO policy, and born out of Africa, born out of what we can do as African businesses. How do we support our staff in a way that is beneficial to them? So I don't know. I can talk about lots of things, but let me pass it on.
Indeed. Who would like to go next? Same question.
Okay, I'll go next. Interesting. I joined an organization, Sanlam, 2 years ago, and the majority of the people there are young and very brave. Just yesterday, we had a function where our board chair was going around and asking people, who's been in the organization for 20 years? And she went around going by how long people had been there. She had mentioned the Gen Zs, but she didn't give them the mic to speak. So after the event, they actually walked over to her and said, why didn't you give us a chance to speak? And I thought, wow, in my time at their age, there's no way I was going to challenge the board chair and ask. But they wanted a conversation. And they said, we need to be heard. We do have things which we'd like to say. And it was very exciting because we were actually saying bye, but we stayed for another 15 minutes discussing the Gen Zs and seeing options and opportunities. And even ourselves, that we actually don't have a product for them. We are selling all manner of solutions, but there's nothing specific for Gen Zs. And they themselves challenged us and brought it out. But I like them because of the energy they bring. And they have phrases like, my truth is this. But I thought truth is truth, but they say, no, my truth, because it's my perspective. And they bring it out. Friday, I think if you walk into our office today, there's music playing. Right at the reception, onwards, on to the various, and people take turns to be DJing. Initially, one would think this is disturbing, but I realize it creates an actual environment where they're thriving. We have a video game room where at any point anyone can take a break and play. FIFA obviously is not very good for me because soccer for long might not work, but I do find a game or two where I can challenge them and play. And I think it's fun because ultimately they're also taking ownership, but they are then enjoying the environment they're in, and we get called out for things. At some point, I know I worked with Mafipe somewhere else in our formative time. There's no way we would have called out people the way they do it. And I can go on talking about the Gen Zs, but I think they bring in a lot of energy, and that's something we should harness. I like the part that talked about the middle management. I think that's a layer that is slowly being forgotten. In the past, you'd have books that talk about the 1-minute manager, this manager, that manager. But if you look now, the glorification seems to be diary of a CEO, speak like a CEO, do this, do that. But the reality is that the execution of the work is actually done by that layer. Being able to invest in it, find out where the gaps are, and deliberately putting things in place to make that layer is strong is what can really make our organizations thrive. Good at execution, like we've been told, but there's so much more that we can do because we strengthen that layer, and then that makes a pipeline available for succession. It's good for organizations to ensure that succession at the top is really coming from within. Yes, other people can come in with ideas from outside, but the ethos, the company culture, and everything that we're being built is always easier when that happens. So benefiting from this report and also seeing these metrics in action. We were able to get the managers do the 360 feedback. Gaps were identified. At some point, that feedback was not taken well because You think you are this, but then the report says this. And then, no, but this is not designed for Africa. I say, no, no, this is actually an African one. It's the other matrices or the other psychometrics that we take that might say you're not suitable for a role that we know you've been thriving in another company as we hire you. So now this particular one is speaking to our needs as Africans, and let's get this feedback because it's a gift. We have a chance to look at what gaps you have, and let's build on these gaps and make sure you are the best version possible of yourself to thrive right here and also to thrive elsewhere if you go. Because we want to say, oh, he used to work at Sanlam, she used to work at Sanlam, and people should have a warm, fuzzy feeling when they want to get you because they know we have things in place to do that. So that layer of middle management, I think, is something really great. I know we're told AI seems to be replacing that and there's no need for that. But for as long as we have it, it's very good that we really harness that and really build that pipeline going forward.
Mafipi is itching.
I think I'm itching now. No, I wanted to start by thanking the team from Zanga for creating new information that we can rely on. I think I'll say something twice, 3 times. It's African headquartered, Zambian headquartered, Lusaka headquartered. That's important. It gives us relevance, and it means that it was meant for us. 2023, I went to South Africa, and I saw something very unusual. I saw a plaster, but it was brown for the first time in my life. My whole life, I grew up, and the plaster was always pink because it was not meant for me. It was meant for a white person. If something as basic and obvious as a plaster that costs no more to color the same as my skin doesn't match, what else doesn't match? I had to relook at textbooks and see a lot of the information they were feeding us is for Europe. It's not for us. They're telling you to start a business by borrowing. I would never advise someone in this environment to do that. It doesn't work. We need solutions that are related to us. So, the youth of Zambia, okay? This is your reference text. We must refer to it. We must be the first ones to point and say, Zanga have done this report. It describes what's taking place in Zambia. What's happening elsewhere, it's nice to know, but it's not about us. And for the first time, we're getting actual data-driven information. I'm sitting next to 2 employers. And here's something interesting. Despite a human resource crisis, every company I go to has got vacant positions. Every single one. And the reason is simple. It is much more cost-effective to leave that position open than to employ the wrong person. The damage that person can do over a sustained period of time is immense. So if we're going to have the most valuable resource in the company, people, we have to pick the right people. We need models that will assess them according to our culture, our approach, our methods, and not something that we just bust in. My final point, targeted at the youth who are not represented on this counter, and there's a reason for that as well. If they're going to be employed, they're likely to encounter a person like me. So it's very helpful that I give advice at this point. Now, what I've often seen is this, okay? We are so caught up in international trends that we don't address the problems that affect our companies locally. Mr. Goma mentioned something, Nankonde touched upon it as well. It's like we have a culture in which people don't show leadership. Leadership is taking action, making decisions. Even if you make mistakes, that's okay. But we have a very strong culture around waiting for somebody else to make the decision. So they take up that risk of addressing the problem. Every company is looking for a proactive person, somebody who will solve problems. You come in and say, this is what I thought was the best course of action. I've done this. I would much rather that, even if it's a mistake, than no action whatsoever. So that inactivity, we need to fix that. It's a top issue for us to address as young Zambians. Thank you.
Thanks, Mafipi.
Thank you very much. I realize I'm the one who comes from an organization that may not be known. I come from an organization called WCAP, standing for Women Capital. And so for us, what Zanga has done through this report is to validate what we already see in our pipeline. When we invest in businesses across Southern Africa, but we use what is known as a towards criteria. And that basically means that we look at women's leadership from different perspectives. First tier would be looking at women's leadership from the ownership of the company. In this case, Zanga is one of the companies we invested in because it's a woman-led business. Secondly, we also look at the criteria of where women are sitting in terms of, let's say at the board level, how many women do you have at your board? And also we look at the employee composition. We like to see businesses that have a majority of women in their businesses. That's what we classify as women-led businesses. On the other angle, if a business has products and services that are serving women, or a majority of women in the supply chain that drive that business, that's what drives our investment. So again, Zanga has validated what we already see in our pipeline. But there's some numbers that stood out for me from the women perspective. There's a number that was shared, yes, in terms of competency. Women are actually competent. But what we tend to do with the women is mentor them and not sponsor them. You know, mentoring is giving advice. Oh, this is what you should do, and it ends there. What we aim to do, and what we hope everyone in this room should do, is to sponsor women. Because when you sponsor women, you are opening the door. You are creating environments where women will thrive. Create an environment where women has to be in a position making where decisions that will change the company, decisions that will change the environment and the continent, like we have seen with Zanga. So thank you very much for the Zanga team for this report that you've given us. You've given us numbers to back what we already see in our pipeline.
There's one aspect of leading organizations which is very tough, and you talked about it a little bit. It's managing upwards and downwards, of course. All of you are reporting to boards, right? In some ways, higher people, but also you're managing, you said, Gen Zs and such. I would like to better understand, and I think everyone would like to better understand how you yourselves prepare for that kind of work. And you talked a little bit about the adjustments you've had to make, but what does that look like on a daily basis? Because obviously you're managing lots of stakeholders. Yeah.
So the different stakeholders, the board, shareholders, franchise, because it's a franchisor. The first thing is to help at a franchise level. So let me start with that, because if anybody's looking to do franchising, you've really got to understand that you have a stakeholder who's quite interested in how well your business is doing so that you pay your royalties and how well that business is being represented. At that level, in terms of managing that, what I've seen at a franchise level as well is that even they are getting younger and younger in terms of the people who are at leadership positions. They're getting younger. We see people averaging now the age of 30 to 35 in very key positions that are making key decisions. But also we find that they don't have an understanding of the landscape here, but are more open to learning. So that makes things a little bit easier today. It makes things easier. So managing it on a day-to-day basis would look like I'd have to give an example. We need to do a campaign. A campaign has been launched, and it's a group-wide campaign, and every franchise is meant to adopt that campaign. We will look at the campaign and now give feedback in a more constructive manner. So I have to use a live example because we're going through one right now. I then take it to the young team. I've seen that when you offer them leadership, when you actually give them an opportunity to lead, they tend to show up very well. How they take criticism is not, it's like Amanga's laughing. We learn how to criticize better, how to give feedback in a much kinder way and a much gentler kind of way. So that's how it shows up. So you give them that opportunity to lead. And what I find is that creates the ownership, and then when there's a problem, you address the problem-solving issue. I actually think that when I look at our workforce, I tend to marry it to our education system. When you're at primary school, If you're looking at someone who has not gone to private school, who hasn't had the privilege of going to a private school, and they go to government schools, they're not encouraged to ask questions. They're not encouraged to come forth with solutions. And our problem, what we're seeing manifesting in the workspace today, is something that is being inbred in families, in schools, at the age of 5. Don't ask, just listen. Receive an instruction. Do not query my instruction. I am the end all and be all of all information. That's how we are educating our children. So what happens is, when these children now come into the workforce and are expected to perform and problem solve, we ourselves have not given them that environment and that platform to learn how to problem solve at a very young age. So now you have to create an environment where you say, it's okay to make mistakes. Let's problem solve this together. And what I've done on a day-to-day basis, I leave it. I say, this is the problem, this is the campaign, Zambianize it. Present in a week. Yes, it takes a lot from a founder CEO. Well, you guys are founders, you know what it's like. Letting go can be a little bit difficult. And you say, I will wait for it on Friday. It will come into my mailbox on Friday. I will take time to review it and then go back. With the feedback then, how it looks in terms of managing stakeholders is that they will present to the franchisor to say, this is what we've done and this is why. So what I found is that it has transformed the workspace for me, and I've actually seen the impact on the bottom line and on revenue as well. Because what we're doing deliberately is actually getting them to solve. And if they make a mistake, it's okay, let's pick up, let's go on. So that's what it looks like on a day-to-day basis for us.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to take that?
It's quite tough to talk about the board when I have 2 board members in the room, but I'll do my best. But one thing is, I've found that I have a very supportive board, and each person there has built their reputation in their own right, and they are thriving in the areas where they are. And they actually do provide that platform where I can easily get to them and ask and get that direction. But one thing I love is that there's congruence. Most times I'll be told things like, I'm not the insurance expert, you are. But I think we could add on this and this, but this challenge has been nagging me. How can we solution for it? What can we do? That I love, because we then sit around the table and then we craft a solution or solve something that way. Coming back to the Gen Zs and the other people that I work with in the organization, very similar. Throw a challenge at them and actually just say, guys, this is the problem, how could we solve this? Realizing that each and every one of them brings different solutions and different perspectives. They do actually come up with brilliant solutions. In the past, the organization was comprised mostly of EXCO, and EXCO then did everything else, did the implementation, did that. But we said, but with this layer of management, the management committee has to start working. Let's strengthen it. They then asked, what are our terms of reference? I said, no, we can't give you the terms. You craft the terms of reference. So we threw it back at them, put them in sessions, and then what was exciting was that they all came back with similar solutions or similar terms of reference, which we then just married and said, those are the terms of reference. Then they asked, when can we meet? We said, no, we can't be the ones to make you meet. You are the ones to choose how you want to meet, because we have a strategy that's approved. We are looking at the overall strategy that needs to be run, but you are the team that's really going to deliver all of this. And since we all know this strategy because we crafted it together, you come up with this. So the moment they realize that they have the latitude to get all of that done, it's elating to see that they actually refined those terms of reference, agreed how frequently they'll be meeting, and my office is similar. It was quite close to the boardroom. So it's soundproof, but sometimes I'll stand up and get closer to the wall just to hear a thing or two. But then I now like the idea that the problems are well listed and the solutions, and then they're taking ownership. And we are then able to see that this thing that had been nagging us for a while actually has a champion who's closing it. And it's not just the managers, they're involving their teams, and everyone is focused at it. And when we walk through the corridors, the theme is there, the theme is clear, and when I ask, aren't you leaving? He says, no, I need to finish this report because tomorrow I'm presenting. Manco has invited me. Now, these are people who are not in management saying, Manco has invited me to present this solution, and would you mind having a look? What do you think? It's okay. Glad you've invited me. And then we sit through, challenge each other, but you can see that ultimately we're after the same thing. The congruence is there, and everyone is buying into it.
5 more minutes. So I want to open it up for questions. You wanted to say something? No. But there's a statement that I would like to read. So as people are preparing the questions, and this one is from Afipe, because I know you like these questions. So I want you to pinpoint where we are. So the statement is, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Ingutu talked about how she's had to be softer, right? But you know, in this, of course, there's a danger or fear that if you become softer, you create, right? So, what are your thoughts around this statement? Yeah.
Really good question. I'll share my own experience. I think we're in a soft time, actually. To give an example of how brutal it was when we started work, it was prohibited to even speak to a senior person without a jacket on. You know, you listened in fear. Or notebook. You had to have a notebook and a jacket. I appreciate the times have changed, but the world hasn't. The people we're competing with are far ahead of us. Unless we're doing something beyond what they're doing, if we follow exactly the same pattern as them, we'll stay behind. We have to be doing more. Before you open it up to questions, something that just came to mind. Early on in my career, I took on what could have been an explosive situation, which was an intern who was the managing director's son. That is automatically a problem in a company, because if anything that's going on in your team is being relayed straight to the top, and that's your boss's boss. So I had to book a meeting with him early on and say, one of us could be fired at the end of the process. And I'm not going to give him any space to misbehave or show up late, because it would destabilize the whole team, even beyond his internship. And he fortunately said to me, do what you have to. This guy must be a member of the team. And I was extremely tough with this guy. And initially he was upset with me because he had grown up coming to the company and being celebrated and important. Now he was being given harsh clerical work to do late into the night. But years later, he came back to thank me, and we've remained very close friends. So I think we've gone too far in the soft direction, and we need to toughen up if we're going to catch up with our competitors.
Okay. Any questions? Does the audience have any questions? None? Yes, Mara?
Thank you so much for those very honest conversation. I am a leader myself, so I know what you're talking about, and we employ a lot of youth. I want to hear, honestly, what are you doing to take care of your mental health? Because I think the expectation is that founders, managers, directors should be taking care of the team, being soft, being accommodating. But toxicity, I think, in the workplace is actually both way now. I see that, where you go to work and you just hate the environment because you're dealing with Gen Zs who are expecting the softness, but no one is giving you the softness. But you need to make tough decisions. What are you doing to take care of your mental health so that you show up in the right form of mind to be able to lead and not being too soft because you have to do it?
Okay, I'll start. It's twofold. On a personal level, I have taken in the most recent months, I think 2 or 3 months, a liking for exercise. I exercise every morning. I'm a morning person, so by 6 o'clock, sometimes 5:50, I'm out of the house for a run, between 5 to 7K, so that I have that energy. Because as investors as well, we deal with a lot of founders who are youth. And with youth, they have a lot of energy. You have to match that energy. Even when you give them targets and you say, you don't meet our criteria right now, come back after 9 months. One founder, youth, really surprised us and came back after a very short time. I think it was 6 months and said, I've met all your targets. Whereas if it was us, from the other generation, would take, first you have to think about it, consult who, but they just go in and execute. So I think mental health for me has started with energy, but also energy enough to meet the targets as well as the team and the interns as well that I manage at the office.
Just observe who will respond to this question, right? Whether they're male or female. Ingutu, you can go next.
I think for mental health, one of the things that I can speak openly about is that I had I've suffered from burnout twice, and that taught me the importance of rest. So I actually switch off. I literally switch off every day at 7 p.m. What my team needs from me is somebody who's got it together. So after suffering from burnout, the first time I thought I could, easily get up and then I suffered again, and I said, this is it. And then also to take time off. We as founders, we tend to always want to be on. We feel the need, and I think we over-exaggerate our relevance. The organization actually will not fall to pieces. So every 90 days, without fail, I take 2 days or 3 days off. So I do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's a cycle, every 90 days. Because I can't go and leave for a month. I can't go and leave for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I can't do that. So what I've done is I've broken it up. So it's every 90 days, like a clock, and it has worked wonders for me. And also doing what I love. I love to watch movies. So on Friday night, I will Netflix binge. Because it's my recharge space. And what surprises me is that during that time, actually, I come up with ideas. I come up with solutions. I'm watching a movie, but I'm not really watching the movie. It's kind of like background noise. And then my time, I've been very deliberate about my time in the office. The young folk, they love to just walk in. They linger outside your door, hoping that you'll see them. I've got a simple notice outside my door. And it says, if you're lingering, you do not know what you want here, go back, figure it out, and then come back. If the door is closed, it says it means don't come in. If it's open, you're more than welcome. And each time I do that. They read and they walk in. If it's open. So that's helped me, because what would happen is I would be like a medical doctor. Somebody comes in, they know, come in. So now the discipline to keep my door closed when I need it closed. And then family. I love to spend time with my family. So I make sure I feed that side. I have to feed it in order for me to be a better person.
And Mongo wants to answer the question, and then you can close out with any last.
Just learned that about the notice on the door. Let's see how I can make it in my voice and have it there. So, a month into the job, as CEO at Sanlam, I had a son born, first child, only son, so far. Now, his demands and his expectations, he doesn't care that daddy is busy and daddy has this. So I get home, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., and he runs to me. And other times he refuses, he wants only me to be the one to bath him. Or I should be the one to feed him. And I'm thinking, okay, I have this thing I should be working on, this thing I should, but then I realize, this guy will not sleep until I'm there. He will not do that. So I must learn to compartmentalize. I have my work schedule and things that are demanding there, but I owe him. I should be there for him. I should be present. My fifth say these are soft times. So gone are the days when fathers would just instruct and say, get this done, you do it together with them. So I must spend time with him. I must spend time with the family. But at the same time, remember that once he goes to sleep, there's a job I have, and that's the reason I'm working to help provide for him and the needs he has. So just being able to compartmentalize, I think, is something that I've seen helping. And the exercise. I'm yet to start running, but I walk. So I think the walking really helps. I pace myself. I know When I walk from the gate to a certain part of the house and I do it 10 times, it's 3Ks. At least the phone was able to tell me. So I do all that counting. But while doing that, I'm listening to a podcast or something where it's just refreshing me and reminding me that I'm elsewhere. I'm not really walking. I'm not enduring pain, but that I'm listening to something that's really helping me there. So that kind of compartmentalization is something that has helped. I hope that helps from a man's perspective. Say, watch who are the ones
Yes,
responding.
and we have some time for networking after this. So I would like to thank Martina, Ingutu, Maunga, and Mafipe. Thank you so much for being on the panel, and we'll move on to the next part of the program. A big hand for them, please.
Thank you. A big hand as they take their seats again. Thank you so much, moderator and panelists, for that engaging discussion, unpacking some of the key aspects around human capital. We now move into a Q&A section, so it allows both you, the audience that are here, as well as those joining us virtually on YouTube, to be able to ask about some of the presentations that have been done. Think about what assumptions did you have, what has really stood out for you, and bring up those questions. Our team from Zanga, we have our general manager, Mr. Davison Kapakilu, in the back. He's ready to take on those questions, as well as CEO Nankonde Kasonde. So I'll open it up for questions. Any questions that you have? Yes.
So we're conscious about time, and I know we started late, and we have an opportunity to network after. Everybody joining us online also has an opportunity to submit questions to us. So I beg that we adjust and adapt to ensure that we don't lose the opportunity to actually talk to each other and engage, because we've set up, for those who are not physically here, we have a networking opportunity and some snacks for you. But I also just wanted to make sure that we're able to have real conversations. And the Q&A, I think, was designed to ensure that our colleagues online can submit questions and we can get to them. So I want to offer, with our youth, a bargain. Could we bridge that? And as we're bridging that, I think we're getting to the moment of actually officially announcing the launch of the reports, because what you've seen before is the embargo version. An embargo because we didn't want it to circulate. As we move into that, I must say that I need to recognize my team. This report is about human capital insights, it's about leadership, and it's about how we treat people, work with people, and help them become the best versions of themselves. I, as a founder, started Zanga alone. But today, 5 years down, 3 years traction in the market across Africa, it's important to note that there are people that I'm also building to succeed. Emmanuel is one, you have met him, and most of our team are youth. So thank you, Emmanuel, for your contributions to Team Zanga. 2 years ago, I made a decision that it was time to step aside and focus on strategic areas of the business. Our investors, WCAP, came in and believed that the only way for us to scale this idea was to ensure that there were systems in place and that their investment would return. We recruited a general manager. Today, our general manager is Mr. Davison Kapakilu. Thank you, Davison. I'm recognizing our team deliberately because we can't be in the industry of human capital development without me role modeling it myself. We have a culture of development in Zanga. We have a culture of leadership that calls out, holds people accountable, but also recognizes when you error and have to give feedback. And as CEO, I live it. I'm the first to say sorry when I make a mistake or I offend somebody. But I'm also the first to say unapologetically when I expect a result. So I'm also on a leadership journey. We also have Dina Tole, who is our head of customer experience, with us in the team. Dina has gone from a junior role to heading the department. She's set up our system, so there's growth for you. We have our recent addition to the team, Sumili, who's joined us as head of sales. And what we are recognizing is that there's a balance between our male and female demographics internally. Not because we want the numbers to report on, but because we recognize the value. We have Taisia, who's also part of our team and part of our operations. And then we have Taida as well, who's here with us. This is Team Zanga. This means that we have an opportunity to ensure that wherever we go, there's an opportunity to understand that it's not just the business. And to bring in the most recent members of the family, we have Isaac, who recently joined us. Isaac is our head of admin and finance, and he's been instrumental to the journey of a startup. Moving from a startup to scaling, we've had to take out from our outsourced services, bring them inside the business. And we've been supported by partners who I'm glad are here, PRI, and Priya, who has been part of the team, and Abacus 360, who supported us. I deliberately want to recognize the people who are part of building an African business, a Zambian business, a Lusaka business, as Mafipe put it, because it means that wherever there is Nankonde, there is also a Davidson, an Emmanuel, a Dina, and others who are also the business. I don't need to be everywhere. I don't need to be the person who anchors the business because it's sustainable. So at this point, I just want to appreciate your presence and take time for us to unveil the report. And we have a QR code that you can download the full report. So when you registered to the event, you, other than I think the panelists and some of our special guests who received the embargo version, you can now actually receive the full report. Are we able to put the QR code on the screen and post it so that you can actually download it? This allows you to read the full report, but we haven't revealed everything. And there's a reason for that, because we want you to buy the rest. We're a business. And we have used the data we collected from the people who gave us the privilege to help their development. We have anonymized it. There is nowhere where you'll be able to recognize who and where this data comes from. It's been aggregated and anonymized. This is very important for data protection because you must be able to trust the integrity, that we are compliant with the regulations, but also ethically as a business. We believe that this data should be used to inform decision making so you can see patterns and trends. It shouldn't allow any manager to point out the next person who they're going to crucify. So we've done this and you should be able to download it. Do we have the QR codes to download the report? Great. Thank you very much. At the same time, as we're projecting the QR code, I would like to take the opportunity to announce what has happened in the last few weeks. The University of Johannesburg has entered into an MOU with us. The business school, the School of Psychology, the School of Management of the University of Johannesburg, we wrote to 8 different universities. 7 came back and said, "Who are you?" The 8th came back and said, "We want to be with you." So the whole University of Johannesburg School of Business Management and Psychology are partnering with us on future reports on the credibility of the data, interpreting the insights, so that what was said earlier by Mr. Ngoma can actually be translated into how do we take it into policy? How do we take it to CEOs? We've had you on the panel. How do we take it to investors? So that this information doesn't grow dust on a shelf, but it actually goes straight into application. And this partnership is significant for us because as a Pan-African business, we believe that their gesture coming forward and offering their students and their own institution to be affiliated with us says we must be doing something right. For a powerhouse like University of Johannesburg to want to associate itself, it means they've seen something in what we're starting to do with the data. But I must say one instrumental sentence that the dean said in our meeting when she said, "Yes, we're going to join you, and yes, we'll do this with you." She said, for a long time, we've been wanting to combine cultural intelligence with the leadership journey. We've been wanting to understand how do we build stronger organizations in our context. We've been thinking about it, but we didn't act on it fully. You have now presented to us the vision that we've been carrying manifest. And so we don't want you to go there alone. We want you to take us with you, and we're going to partner to get it done. And so that's where the partnership today is being formalized through a legal agreement with the University of Joburg. They've given us the permission to announce it as the legal department finalizes the details, but the general MOU has been signed.
Thank you very much for that. As we come to a close, I'll now invite the Head of Customer Experience to come and announce the next steps of action, which will just guide on how you'll be able to access the report. And from then on, she'll be able to announce one of our partners who's here, the founder of Chartered Institute of Customer Management, Mr. Dominic Manhundu. A big round of applause for our Head of Customer Experience as she comes through.
Thank you very much. It is with great pleasure that I stand before you, seeing this day come to pass and seeing where we are starting from. And I would just like to mention, as a youth, it is a great privilege to be a part of the team that put this data together, and also sitting in the room where we are discussing this. I believe development works most effectively when we work with data, tools, and frameworks that speak to the African people. You want to implement something for the African person, use the information that comes from the African person. It will speak to actually who they are, where they see themselves going, and where we can actually take the continent. So for everyone who is able to register on the link, the report will be made available. It will be available on our platforms. We will share a link to your email address, as well as send your notification via message. We have a bulk messaging platform, so be able to send your notification via message on where you can access the report. And in this moment, I would like to welcome the Executive Director of the Chartered Institute of Customer Management, Mr. Dominic Manhundu, who's also the founder of the CICM Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dina. And thank you very much, CEO, for the opportunity. My job here is very simple. I think there's information overload and speech fatigue. So I'm going to be very short and very precise. My job is to just give a call to action. We have seen the report, we have heard the insights. We now need to move from propaganda, from cadarism, and innuendo. We have the facts now that should drive decisions. So we keep saying the time for Africa is now, but where are we basing that? We have been doing that to make ourselves feel good. But now we are looking at Africa from a data-driven lens, where we have the opportunity to look at figures from our own context and make decisions out of that. Just a few weeks ago, we were at a platform where CICM were also launching another report in customer experience, the National Customer Experience Index, where we're looking at what really is happening in the customer experience space in Zambia and coming up with our own benchmarks, and our own story was unfolding. And I think that is very important. So my call to action, and I also like to mention the presence of government and what he said, that we have our 8th National Development Plan that is in action right now. But, well, I don't know how it came to be, but he mentioned that as they are developing the next one, they are going to use these statistics to make sure that it's all encompassing and we have everything covered within that blueprint. So, once again, thank you very much. My call to action is that let's use this data to make sure that Zambia moves forward, Africa moves forward, and we all get to improve and go to another level without importing statistics from abroad. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those clear call to actions. I now take the pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to bring the close of this program formally. On behalf of Zanga African Metrics, I would like to thank you all our partners involved, thank you for joining us. Those who are also joining us virtually on YouTube. And for this big milestone for Zanga African Metrics, I think we can give a round of applause for this launch once again. Thank you all our speakers, moderators, panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media for joining us. Now I can officially mention that we have a refreshments segment where we'll be able to network and discuss more on the findings of this report. I've been your Director of Programs, Emmanuel Fungaloko, the Business Analyst at Zanga African Metrics, and it's been an honor and pleasure to be here. Have a wonderful afternoon and thank you. Food is just outside, so you might walk through and just collect our refreshments as we network. Thank you.